Hi, it's February 25th, and I'm going to talk about, well, I guess what I talk about in every video, some aspect of federal prison. Before I jump into today's lesson, I'm going to quickly share to those who have interest an initial template of my new site, federalprisonadvice.com, which will be live next month, that I'm very proud of. And here you get an idea of the courses that we'll be offering to those who subscribe or become members and part of this experience we're creating, including some of these benefits of coaching and videos and weekly office hours and resources and everything in between. So the site's coming together. It should be up next month, and I'm very proud of it. So in lieu of my looking into the camera, you're just going to have to look at a photo of me as I transition into this video. As many of you know, I have a very close relationship with my partner and mentor, Michael Santos, who served 26 consecutive years in prison. I met Michael at Taft Federal Prison Camp, and much of what I learned from him. One day while walking the track, I asked Michael to describe to me the Stockholm Syndrome. He had written a blog about it, and I was curious to get his interpretation. He responded by saying, "Didn't you graduate USC with a psychology degree and you don't know the Stockholm Syndrome?" So rather than letting on that I did, I said, "Well, I don't know much. Can you educate me?" And later that afternoon in the Taft library, he showed me this similar definition, except it wasn't online, of course. It was through the dictionary. And the definition of the Stockholm Syndrome reads, it's a psychological phenomenon in which hostages express empathy and sympathy and have positive feelings toward their captors, sometimes to the point of defending and identifying with the captors. And we discussed this. Well, I learned about it from a blog he wrote. And from there, I was asking, his thoughts on it. And he said, you have to adjust in a way that's best for you and your family and your prison term. And he really encouraged me to understand my environment, to study those who are succeeding in prison versus those who might be having trouble. So based on that advice, I began watching and making a study of my fellow prisoners. And through this study, I remember a prisoner every Monday morning would speak for 20, 30, 40 minutes to a guard. And it always followed football on Sunday. So they would talk about the playoffs and the Super Bowl and Tom Brady and who's going to win and the Raiders. It was just endless conversation about football. And I'd watch them have this conversation, and I'd look at other prisoners walk by and give him a look almost in disbelief that they were having such a lengthy conversation. And I know that he wasn't sharing any information on any other inmates. I don't believe he was, at least. But I do remember one Monday afternoon that this guard that had this conversation with this inmate, this guard was searching someone's locker. And they tend to search a lot of lockers in prison. My locker was searched. It's just common, sort of like a drug test. It's random. But that specific day, the inmate's locker that was searched, it upset the inmate. And he inferred and made it clear that he thought this educated white-collar offender who was speaking to the guard earlier that day, that the white-collar guy must have said something, and that's the reason his locker was searched. And from that, he had some problems. No fights, but he was ostracized, and there were some comments that were made. And I think part of the reason, now that I've learned so much more about it, part of the reason that he was constantly speaking to the guard is because he probably better identified with the guard than maybe some of the low-level drug offenders that were in the prison with him. And that leads to the email I got last night on behalf of a client who, prior to his surrender, we discussed his tendencies, some of the decisions that he made, and what he has to be aware of in prison. Prison's a microcosm of society. It's a different dynamic. If any, of all things, of any time to be aware of your tendencies, it's in prison. And he had mentioned he's a likable guy who likes to associate with people. And I had reminded him, it's my opinion, you're my client, that you don't associate with the guards. There's very little upside in doing so. So even though I made that point clear, everyone has to make their own decisions. And the email that he sent me basically said a few prisoners had given him a hard time for conversing with staff, case managers, the counselor, and others around the compound, to the degree where he was feeling uncomfortable, not threatened, but uncomfortable, and he's lost a couple of friendships from it. So I'm going to respond at the end of this video to my client and help him unwind some of the decisions he made and remind him of the discussions we had before he surrendered to prison, of why it's important to understand your tendencies and to think through everything you do on the inside. Because for the most part, he's done well, though this is a disruption, and I want to help him get back on track. So part of the reason that this happens, and I'm convinced of this, It is easier to identify at times with the guards who might have an education level that's similar to yours. And for those that don't view your conduct as criminal, or you don't see yourself as a criminal, it's certainly not it's such a stretch to not be able to associate with many of the fine people with whom you might be serving time. So again, you want to understand some of those tendencies and think through everything you do. And I always close with a few options that people have who reach out to me. Option one is you know that you need to make changes. You might have the budget or resources to make changes, but rather than investing the money or having the money, you don't want to make the effort. I had a call again yesterday with an educated professional out of Connecticut who said on a scale of 1 to 10 for his preparations, he's a 7. We dissected his behavior over the last 2 weeks. He's not a 7. He's maybe like a 1.5 or a 2. And when I shared some thoughts on what he should be doing, his thoughts were, well, it's hard. That seems like a lot of work. Wow, really? That seems a little much, does it? Really? I mean, you think I should need to do all that? I'm only going away for 18 months. Yes, you need to do all of that and then some. So it wasn't a budget issue. It was an effort issue. There's no magic pill that's going to make this better. Some people have given me heat by saying that I can't help everyone, but I can't. I can't help someone who doesn't want to work. The second option, of course, is retaining me, going through the strategic lesson plans, the videos, the coordinated structure, and implementing the strategies that we work on. I suggest that for people that want to succeed. The third option is retaining me, invoking some of the strategies, but not following through. And that's what I'm going to remind my client in this email this morning, who made an investment in hiring me, and remind him that it only makes sense, or the investment in hiring me only makes sense if we follow through on what we say we're going to do. So my client has done exceptionally well, other than this little mistake that will unwind. But if you choose to hire me, you want to go all in, you want to follow the strategies, understand the rules of prison, both written and unwritten, and think through everything that you do. That way you can avoid problems, thrive through prison, and ensure that you're maximizing your investment in me. Okay, for those who have interest in a copy of my book, Lessons from Prison, visit federalprisonadvice.com. And I'm going to give one more shameless plug to the federalprisonadvice.com site that's coming up soon. Courses, detailed courses, strategic plans, private coaching, time with me, how-to videos, stuff that I can never share on YouTube, restitution and cultivating a network, and life on the inside, stuff that I wouldn't put on the internet. Office hours. When I went to prison, my family needed help. Frankly, some of the message boards I found depressing and, if anything, gave my family misinformation. So these office hours will be bi-weekly, where wherever you are, you can call in and get your questions answered, or if you don't want to say it over the phone line or webinar, you can type in the answer and me and my experts will answer it. But it's support for your family during the whole journey, which frankly my family needed. We have our Facebook private member page where we learn and get support from one another, resources, our sentencing tool, checklist, template, case studies, and expert. Everything is going to be on the back end for those that register. I'm very excited about it. I've created this alongside my good friend Michael Santos, who helped me develop these plans and played such a role on this site that's upcoming. So I'm so grateful for his friendship and support in what we're developing together. Okay, to everyone watching, work hard, prepare for the journey, make good use of it. More videos to come. Thank you for your time. Okay, goodbye, back soon.